My first reaction yesterday, Tom, I was sick to my stomach. I said golf. I didn't grow up with money, so golf was for rich people and old people. And Tiger made it cool, and he made it inclusive, and he made it like he was an athlete. And my first thought yesterday was, oh God, no. It's been a bad year. You're really close to him. What was your first thought?
Almost exactly the same. It was not for the legend and the athlete and the golfer and the all-time great, Colin. It was for, predictably, I'd say, for the man. And I think whether you know him or not, that's your first reaction. That was compounded by seeing the state of the car. And we understand that the car obviously is going to undergo further damage due to extricating him. But nonetheless, to see the airbags deployed, to be so thankful for that, for the crumple zone, to see the images of it 30-some odd yards or whatever it might have been off of Hawthorne in that downward winding part of that boulevard, whatever speed he was traveling at, you naturally wondered about survival. And that's a frightening thought. And that was my first thought.
Tiger was socially different. He was a star at Stanford. And socially, he didn't have a robust social life. And initially, he, trusted people and was kind of jovial. And then he got burned a couple of times by the media and shut himself down. He never shut himself down with you. You had a trust with him. Do you remember the first time you met him? And do you remember the first time you thought, he trusts me?
Well, the first time I had any real substantial time with him, he was at his absolute zenith, Colin. It was in the 2000 season when he was competing the Tiger Slam, essentially.
Yeah.
And I sat down and did a sit down with him at Augusta National. And afterward, I'm a handwritten note guy. And I wrote him a handwritten note to say thanks for the time and how open-hearted and generous he was. And I reached out to Mark Steinberg, his longtime agent and great friend, and said, if I send this to you, will you get it to him? I'll never forget. Steinberg deadpanned, well, I have no use for it, Tom. So, yeah, I'll give it to him. and I did. And sure enough, the next time I saw him was at the subsequent U.S. Open that season. And Colin, there was a media gathering in the media tent. He did a press conference, and then there was a small gaggle when he used to do those. And on his way out the door, he just happened to catch my eye and just said, thanks for the note. And maybe from there, for whatever reason, and if he were on this line, and we certainly wish he was for many, many reasons, he would, I'm sure, bust my chops and bust yours about the fact that he probably regrets that we've been as connected as we have been over the years. It's a connection I never want to overstate. It's not like we go whitewater rafting every other weekend, but he is somebody who, through, I guess, reasons I'll never fully understand, has been wonderful toward me, cordial, kind, open, can throw a jab with the best of them, can break your chops. He's just been wonderful toward me.
Tom, there are certain things that are hard to describe. I tell the story all the time is boxing was so big when I was a kid. I used to watch a cartoon show in the morning in Seattle, and they broke into programming to say Ali beat Foreman and Zaire for a cartoon show. And you can't really describe how big it was. Boxing was huge in the 70s and 80s, and Muhammad Ali was massive. I want you to take my audience back to what it was like, the galleries at the zenith, at the top of covering Tiger. Many of my people that will watch these clips on YouTube and such, they're 20. They have no idea what it was like. You've covered everybody. You've covered everything. Was it surreal?
Yes. The sound, the fact that he was, Colin, and I thought you described this beautifully when you said Jordan and Tiger meant more to their respective sports than anyone else. And I would even say that perhaps Tiger, because of how he changed his sport in terms of its inclusive category, that maybe he even outpaces Jordan in that regard. 8 and 9 and 10 deep. The children that wanted to see him, touch him, be a part of him, the older generations that wanted to see him, the people of color, the black and brown faces that came out. And I said this, Colin, I really believe it. Right now, he is among the 5 most compelling figures in our country across any venue, any societal institution, for many of the reasons you eloquently laid out at the top of this hour, for what he achieved, but also what unfolded in the wake of that achievement. I'm compelled, as you are, Colin, by greatness. But what he embodies is greatness at its highest note and also at its greatest cost. That's what, in so many ways, Tiger embodies. And to me, that's the best I can do to put my finger on why he is so compelling.
You know, it's interesting. We tend to love people that are more vulnerable. Brady never ages. And he's not as, I think, embraceable as Peyton Manning and the multiple surgeries or Brett Favre, the death of his father. They were so embraceable. Tiger was hard for many in golf to embrace initially. He was so worshipped. And then he had real world problems. And then he comes back and wins the Masters. And those galleries, I mean, it was hard to find a dry eye at Augusta. It's so unique. His comeback is like nothing I've ever. It's a different Tiger Woods, right?
I could not agree more. I was bowled over, Colin, by the number of people who reached out to me, texted me in the wake of Tiger winning in 19, exactly as you describe. Stoic men, crusty men who were crying through sending texts out, who were moved so emotionally. And as you try to think as to why, I think there's 2 pretty obvious reasons, and then there's individual reasons. Here are the 2 obvious ones. Number one, because of the generational loop so perfectly portrayed. 97, the bear hug with Earl and everything he had poured into Tiger and that iconic moment. And then Tiger, all those years later, hugging his own children after all he'd been through. Second reason, Colin, is because of his seasons and moments of failure. Some, of course, self-imposed, others that were physical in terms of their breakdown. And the fact that he endured and ultimately prevailed through those for that moment is something that just moves people so deeply. I've been blessed, Colin. I was at the game when George Bush threw out the first pitch post 9/11. I was at the first Women's World Cup, Brandy Chastain. I could go on and on about, I was at Jordan Game 6 over Russell. But I've never seen an emotional reaction to a moment in sport, an achievement, a victory like Tiger in 19. It's indelible, something I know I'll never forget.
Tiger turned 45 in December. If he never played golf again, he's best or second best ever, certainly the most dynamic for a decade. Do you have any information or thoughts on his future this morning?
Obviously, we begin with hoping that his recovery, his health, all of those things are going to be the priority, to be a father, to be a friend, to be somebody who can lead his best and fullest life. But here's the thing, Colin. His competitive fire, as lit by the game of golf, will help him in all of those other pursuits because he is so driven. Whether that does lead to a return to golf and then competitive golf, that's way out on the horizon. But I wouldn't say it's way out on the horizon already in that man's DNA and in his mind. And wherever it resides, it will serve as fuel to help him achieve the more immediate and important priorities to get back to health. And I think, Colin, you know, the notion as to those lower leg injuries and how serious they are, it's going to be a difficult, grinding, grueling rehab, but he's been through it before and come out the other side.
God, I just love looking at these images. It's just incredible.
Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah, I say this often. About once, twice a year, I go down the Tiger Woods YouTube rabbit hole, and I watch some of his shots, and he was so mesmerizing. There's three things in my life that have changed my TV habits: The Sopranos on Sunday night, the NFL, and Tiger Woods. It literally for a decade. Sunday night, I would literally go into a weekend, think, get all your crap done, Cowherd, because Sunday at 3, I'm turning the television set to Tiger Woods, and it's real. I didn't grow up with golf, and that's how I felt.
I'll also say this, Colin. He, you know, as a generalist, as somebody who's covered a lot of different sports and gotten to spend some time with a lot of different coaches and athletes, no one is more connective than Tiger Woods. No matter what the sport, people, especially athletes, Colin, and coaches in particular, let's say college coaches, they are fascinated by the guy. They all want to talk about him in football, in tennis, in baseball, in basketball. They all want to talk about him. He's a remarkably transcendent and yet connective figure in that regard.
Tom, great having you on the show. Continued success. It just reminds me how many events Tom Rinaldi has been at, and that's why he's at Fox now. We love him, and thanks, buddy. Appreciate you having you on.
So glad. I know I said it before, Colin. So glad that you're back with us and you're feeling healthy. We appreciate you.
All right. Tom Rinaldi, I knew him back when he was